Guillermo, welcome to the Tech Recruitment podcast. I'm very excited about having you on this show because you have so much experience with the cloud, with AWS. You are the AWS hero as well, right? So you worked with different people in your teams, different roles before you transitioned to being the fractional CTO. So why don't we look at the different roles that you had the chance to work with within the cloud kind of department or cloud team?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. By the way, we're really glad to be talking to you. So yeah, as a result of kind of working with and starting in some cases platform teams or infrastructure teams, I've had the opportunity to work with and hire site reliability engineers, QA engineers, automation engineers, software engineers that are focused on building out more like APIs and backend related things, and then more traditional full stack engineers as well, or front end and backend engineers. So yeah, kind of covering the whole gamut.
Yeah, and you mentioned platform engineers. So what is the difference between a platform engineer and a DevOps engineer or a cloud engineer? Also, considering that a large part of our audience are technical recruiters who may need to recruit these people, but they don't really understand the subtle differences.
Yeah, good question. I think I don't I don't think many people understand the differences, and so what you'll see is a lot of times, a job description might say, or the title might say, we're looking for a platform engineer when they mean something else, the terms have really been overused, and so and almost like diluted. But in most cases, generally, when you're looking for like I'd say a platform engineer is somebody that is really focused on the availability and resilience of like the platform that's supporting the application, right? And so this person might be more like an SRE that is working on, defining SLIs and SLOs. SLIs are service level indicators. SLOs are service level objectives. So they're trying to make sure that the application is available. They'll work with the other engineers, the full stack engineers or the software engineers on the team to help them do what they need to do to support the application through that might be helping to develop runbooks or helping to develop the CI/CD pipeline, so that kind of stuff. So I generally see platform and SRE titles kind of mirroring each other, whereas cloud engineer is really I'd say some of that work is also in cloud engineering, but usually when you see cloud engineering, you're talking about the infrastructure. So managing the infrastructure. So the person that manages the servers potentially also helps to keep the databases up and running, and then might also do some of the CI/CD work, working on the pipelines and setting up metrics and the instrumentation, that kind of stuff. But they're pretty similar, but the specializations I think are a little different, if that makes sense.
So would you say that the cloud engineers specialize in a specific cloud like GCP or AWS or Azure, while the platform engineers, they are generally kind of working across different cloud providers?
Oh, that's interesting. I'd say in a lot of cases, I don't think the hybrid cloud model is as popular as folks think it is. I think generally, like a cloud engineers will do what I call like have a major and a minor, right? So like a cloud engineer might like do most of their work in AWS, but like also is familiar with GCP, right? Or Azure, just enough to a lot of the concepts are the same across these different CSPs. Terminology is a little bit different, approach is different sometimes, but you usually don't, like in my experience, you don't find somebody usually who's like really goes really deep in all of the different CSPs. It's generally they know one really well and know another kind of well. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, the platform engineers, I think they're working. I think there are concepts across all of them that across all of these different CSPs that they are focusing on. So again, they're focusing on the availability. They're focusing on the resilience of like that platform, and so and generally their tool set might actually be outside of the CSP. They might be working with things like like Datadog for metrics collection, right? And that will allow them to work in whatever cloud that they need to work on. But they're focusing on usually like a different set of tools that exist kind of that work in concert with the CSP.
Awesome, awesome. And I can imagine that people who are transitioning from one role to the other, let's say from full stack development to the cloud, or people who are transitioning completely from outside of the IT industry, going through some boot camp, they are wondering what to do once they get into cloud. Like, should they become platform engineers or DevOps engineers or site reliability engineers or cloud engineers? I mean, into a large extent, these roles could be kind of hyped, right? And there are subtle differences, as you said. But what should someone who is transitioning do actually? How to navigate through all of these roles? Which ones are, based on your experience, the best starting point for someone who is kind of transitioning?
Yeah, I would say the cloud engineer is probably the place where you want to go first. I think the other roles like SRE, platform engineer, those usually require a lot more experience. You'll have to know a lot about how applications work, how they work on different infrastructure, and really understand principles related to site reliability to really do well in those roles and even land one of those roles. Whereas with cloud engineering, it's more focused on like, can you spin up a server? Can you support an infrastructure that is taking on a production workload? And that doesn't necessarily require you to have a bunch of like hands-on experience, production experience to get started. I think you can get in there, you can play around with AWS on your own and learn how to do some things. You can go through a program to learn how to do some of those things and get a job and then learn on the job, right? You can gain that experience and then go from just being a cloud engineer to being a platform engineer or an SRE eventually.
Okay, so you see these as kind of next steps, right? Start as
I
a
would say,
cloud engineer and then become a platform engineer or an SRE, a more
yeah,
senior kind of a
I
person
think
on.
so. Yeah, I think those they require you. The SRE and platform engineering require you to also know a little bit about software engineering, right? Which is different from cloud engineering in a lot of ways. And so you get that experience, on the job. I would say.
Mm. And where does Kubernetes fall into this scheme? Because this is the technology that everyone talks about. It is used across the board, right? Different cloud service providers have implemented it. So, is this something that cloud engineers should take care of, or DevOps engineers, or SREs, or platform engineers, or all of them? How it works?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this depends on the organization, but I would say all of those different types of engineers would touch Kubernetes in one way or the other. I would normally see like a cloud engineer standing that up and making sure all that stuff is working. But definitely the other two would be involved in some way and making sure that the application can get deployed without any issue. Like, are we going to use blue green deployments? Figuring out those kinds of things would be normally relegated over to like a platform engineer, SRE. Cloud engineer would normally just kind of stand that stuff up. But again, it depends on the organization and what they decide to call things, right? So I do want to stress that different places do different things. There really isn't like a standard that exists across all these different companies. It'd be easier if there was one, but there isn't. People do whatever they want to do and call things whatever they want to call them. So
Yeah, sometimes because they want to attract new talent to join the
yeah,
teams, come up with some fancy names, right?
absolutely.
Interesting, interesting. Okay. And speaking of Kubernetes, it is really hyped. Now everyone talks about it. Are there any common misconceptions about Kubernetes that you have kind of seen, or you've encountered something kind of strange about Kubernetes, or situations when it is not really such a good fit as people may kind of immediately think?
Yeah, I think what you just said is really at the heart of it. I think a lot of because it's so popular and it's something that a lot of people are talking about. Organizations usually think that all right, everyone else is using Kubernetes, we should be using Kubernetes, and that's just not the case all the time, right? If your application requires it, then or requires a solution that would benefit from like the pros of using Kubernetes, and great. But I think in most cases, ECS is a perfectly fine solution. AWS is Elastic Container Service. And I'm working with a couple of startups right now. One of the ones that I'm working with, we're not really expecting as they're developing the application and getting it ready to launch. They're not expecting astronomical amount of traffic to come in. Deployment is really straightforward. And so ECS is a perfectly fine solution. And I think it's going to be the right solution for quite some time. I don't see them needing to take on the complexity and overhead of something like Kubernetes until it's actually required. If you're just deploying a monolith, a back end to the web, do you really need all the bells and whistles that come along with Kubernetes? Probably not. If you're deploying multiple services and you have a really complex architecture, yeah, maybe Kubernetes works for you there, but in most cases, I don't think it's necessary.
Awesome. And speaking of Kubernetes and some of these cool platforms and technologies, are there some other technologies that you see getting traction these days? Something that we will probably hear a lot about in 2 or 3 years from now, something that got your attention recently?
I wouldn't say there's like a specific service. I think what's catching my attention, just like everybody else's, is the use of AI, right? So I think AI is making its way into the DevOps space in a lot of interesting ways. I know I just took a look at, I think it's Tools has a visual testing AI feature that will take a look at your application's AI and generate regression tests, which is great. Rootly, which is an application that I use and I'm I'm a pretty big fan of. They're starting to use AI in their incident management tool. It's a Slack-based tool, and so they're starting to use it to help you generate, the names of incidents, how to generate status updates about an incident as it's ongoing. So yeah, lots of great things happening, I think, in AI in the DevOps space. In AWS, you can do like predictive scaling, and in other CSPs as well. But that's the kind of stuff that I think we're going to start to see a lot more of now and over the next few years in DevOps.
And it's interesting that you mention it, because also a lot of recruiters out there, they are kind of wondering what IT roles to focus on, what kind of professionals to connect with, because they are kind of selfishly looking at the people who might be placed in a year or two from now, right? That's what recruiters do. They build a list of prospective candidates, they build their database, they invest their time to connect with professionals. And now with AI and everything that's going on, they are kind of wondering, who are the people we should be connecting with? Like, will DevOps engineers be replaced because now there is this generative AI, or will testers be, replaced because of all these new cool apps that you just mentioned? Will platform engineers be around in 2, 3 years from now? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think, I think DevOps engineers, platform engineers, cloud engineers will be here to stay. I don't see them being replaced. I do see their work being assisted by different AI tools, and their workflows being more efficient as a result of the use of AI. But I don't think um, that they're going to be kind of flat out replaced. I think there's still a lot of there's still a place for people who have the experience, who can get their hands onto a solution and help to improve it. And I don't think AI is at a place yet where we're going to completely phase those jobs out. And as far as testers go, over the last few years, I've been hearing different things about testing. We're not going to hire any more testers, and then I've seen like a big influx of like QA positions recently in some places. I don't. I think there's still a place for manual testing in addition to automated testing. I think automated testing is definitely here to stay, but there's definitely uh, a place for people who think the way QAs think, and I think that's a really important um, uh, skill set, especially as your organization grows. I think maybe in a smaller like startup, there might not be the right place for QA engineers, but as things grow, as your application gets more complex, having somebody who thinks like a QA is really valuable, in my opinion.
Yeah. That sounds like there is still place for Q engineers on the market, which will make a lot of people happy. Those who spend the last few years really practicing the skill. Awesome. And what do you think is the future of the cloud infrastructure going forward now with the serverless being here and the automation on the cloud provider side as well? So what do you think, is going to happen in the next few years with regards to setting up new instances and maybe not even instances now with serverless?
Yeah, I think we'll continue to see more serverless solutions, more fully managed solutions. I think AI will definitely help to inform the way that works, for sure. I expect to see more things, more applications of concepts like predictive scaling throughout, the different CSPs, things like that, to kind of um, help with the tedious, repetitive tasks that go along with like spinning up or maintaining an infrastructure. Um, yeah, I definitely think that we will just continue to get better. I think, especially
Mm.
in DevOps, that is so focused on automation and continuous improvement. That's just going to be what continues to happen through the application of AI. We're just going to keep getting better and more efficient. And the CSPs, just I think it's just important for people to stay close to what's going on at AWS, GCP, Azure, and other places. Keep an eye on what they're doing, watch their blogs, and watch their service releases to see what they're thinking. What are they trying to do? What areas are they investigating and exploring, and just stay close to that stuff.
Mm. And now, when you mention blogs, it just reminds me that maybe you know of some really good blogs or maybe some channels or be some other sources of information where you like to get new information from? Like, is there anything you would recommend to either recruiters who would like to get into the cloud recruiting or maybe even people who are just starting with cloud recruiting as such?
Hmm. I would say, in terms of resources and blogs, so the state of DevOps support is a great place to kind of get started. I think every year, the Dora puts out the state of DevOps report. There's always great insights into like what's going on in the DevOps space there, and how teams are working together. So definitely do, get download that report every year when it comes out. I do. I read that report every time it comes out. I'd also, I also, just in terms of DevOps, I'll keep talking about that before I jump into infrastructure. I'd say Charity Majors is a great person to follow. Really influenced the way I approach on call and incident management. Um, the Phoenix Project, great book. One of the first books I read on DevOps, as well as Jez Humble's the book on continuous delivery that he wrote all those years ago. But in terms of the cloud, um, there's some people on LinkedIn that I follow that are really great. Keith Townsend is a great resource on LinkedIn. Keisha Williams, who's also an AWS hero, she's a machine learning hero, but she's great. A lot of good things coming from her. LinkedIn in general is a great place to find resources and people who are focused on the cloud. And then obviously AWS blogs are great. Especially during feature releases and during reInvent, there are all these different new products getting released. So staying close to that stuff is always exciting and educational.
Well, I'll need to re-watch this part of this and just to take some notes so that I can include the links in the show notes. Thanks again for sharing this. It seems to be really valuable kind of insights and everything. And speaking of reinvent, what were some of the really interesting or exciting parts that you have seen AWS releasing recently?
Yeah. For me, so most of the work that I do as a hero is I'm a data hero, so I focus really on like the data and analytics space in AWS. So aside from like Bedrock, which everybody is always is very excited about, I'm really excited about some of the data services and some of the changes that were made there. Some really cool stuff going on with SageMaker and database stuff that's going on. Some really cool features in RDS that have recently been released. I'm trying to remember the name of the service that I'm really digging into. Goodness gracious, I can't remember it right now, but goodness gracious, it's like there are some new data lake related services in AWS that are really exciting as well. Data Zone, there it is.
Yes.
Data Zone. Really excited about the things going on there, and how it helps people kind of their manage their data solutions, and provides permissions to different groups of people. It really kind of encapsulates all the stuff related to managing your data governance. So yeah, a lot of good stuff happening.
And speaking now of data, what do you see as the future of data engineering slash data analytics? Because also AWS, they had the certification for data analysts and they kind of deprecated it, right? Now they only would like to focus on data engineering from what I understood. So do you see this as a trend to shift people from just pure data analytics and reporting to being more kind of full stack, if we can call it full stack, just to be able to pull data, clean data, and also visualize the data on the report?
That's an interesting question. I don't think across the market that there is um, less focus on data analysis or data analysts. I think there is still a place for folks who can help to tell the story of the data. And I think, yes, there are lots of places that kind of require data engineers to do all of it, right? To do the collection and the transformation and develop the models and do the visualizations. But having those people that are specialized in analyzing the data and translating it into insights that C-level people or leaders in the company can use to make decisions is still incredibly valuable. And I still think there's a place for them versus separating the two is still important. They are two different skill sets, and I think there's a data analyst is also, I think, a great place for people to aspire towards. I think if you have an understanding of SQL, and especially SQL, if you can write a query, do some analysis, if you're great at storytelling and generating visualizations, that's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door into tech and into data versus having to and there's nothing wrong. Data engineering is great as well, but I think especially if you're maybe transitioning from a different um, industry, everybody needs somebody to write reports and to translate things. And I think there are some skills that can be easily transferred over to data analysis.
Right, right. Well, that's kind of interesting how all these roles kind of unfold. I remember the data engineers 10 years, 15 years ago using PLSQL. Now they use some completely different technologies with cloud and data zone, you said, on AWS. Is it
Data
data zone?
zone, yeah.
Data
Mhm.
zone. So for some people, it may be hard to keep track of everything, but that's probably what is exciting about this role of the IT professional. And speaking of excitement, um, often recruiters also try to make some of the vacancies more exciting for prospective candidates, right? Because there are so many opportunities. People have people on the market. They have lots of opportunities to choose from. So, based on your experience, what would make it really appealing for a cloud engineer to get a new job? Or in other words, how can a recruiter make a vacancy make more appealing for a prospective candidate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think what's attractive to people, in my experience, is, if let's say, especially for entry level people, somebody who's just breaking into being a cloud engineer, what would make that role attractive to me is, will I be able to work with somebody a little bit more senior who can help kind of shepherd me through, the work that has to be done? Will I be working for a manager that will invest in me and take the time to help develop me as part of my career? Will the work that I'm doing um, be impactful in any way? Will I have the ability to experiment a little bit? Will I be trusted enough to do the work that I need to do? Right. I think sometimes um, in some environments where you hire a junior engineer, you don't give the junior engineer the freedom to actually do things in production necessarily, right? And until they get to a certain place. But if you can put the right guardrails in place that will allow that person to do some experimentation and try things, in production, that's the kind of thing that I think, that I've learned in my experience, that is attractive to people. Not just being able to like do the work, and being in an environment that's collaborative and that embraces innovation, that will allow me to make some mistakes and learn from those mistakes without having the fear of being fired.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Often recruiters or even hiring managers, they just focus on the very boring aspects of the job, the location and work on site or remote or the salary compensation. Like those are important, but what do you just enumerated? Like that's what really makes people or gets people excited about the opportunity. Awesome.
Yeah.
And what about people who are a bit further in their career, like yourself, for example, right? You have so much experience now with AWS and cloud and everything. So what about people with 10, 15 years of experience? What would make them excited about prospective jobs or vacancies?
Yeah. So I'll give you, there's two different tracks for people that are more senior. Either they're, they want to become that kind of like that principal technologist that is really a really focused IC, or they want to be in people leadership. So I think, in dealing with folks that want to be those like really strong senior plus engineers, it's some of the same stuff, right? It's the management. Am I going to have a manager that's kind of going to micromanage me? Because I don't want that, especially at a senior level. I want to be able to do what I need to do, and I'll work with the engineers and make recommendations based off my experience, without having somebody kind of telling me what to do who isn't as close to the work as I am. Will I be developed? Will I be able to go to conferences and speak on behalf of the company, or just kind of to develop my own personal brand? Will I be able to learn continuously? Will they let me take classes and that kind of thing? And then on just the work itself, will I have the freedom to do the kind of work that I want to do? Usually staff plus engineers are kind of in a position where they can jump from project to project, right? They don't, or from team to team. They like to have the freedom to decide where they need to focus their energy, and then do that for a time, and then say, oh, this other project is going on, or this other thing that the business really values is happening, and I want to have some input into that. I want to design the technical solution for that. Will I have the ability to do that? So I think that's the kind of thing that as a senior or senior plus engineer, that would be attractive. On the people management side, am I going to have the freedom to build the team the way I want to build the team? Right? Do I have the ability to figure out what kinds of engineers I want, and to develop the kind of culture that I want to work in, and I want them to work in? Will I be able to let them, learn? Will I be able to let them fail? And what does the company say about that kind of thing? Will there be clear expectations set for these people that I'm going to support? So those are the kinds of things I think, as a people manager, you're looking at, like, how will I be set up for success if I take on this role? And will I be able to do the kinds of things that I like to do as a people manager at this new company?
Well, these insights are golden, and I hope recruiters who are now listening to us or watching on YouTube will just rewind back a minute or two and kind of take some notes, because this can be applied right away to adjust some of the job adverts to actually include some of these phrases that you just mentioned. Of course, those need to be cross-checked with managers just to ensure that those opportunities really tick all those boxes. But if yes, well, then it's so much easier to sell those opportunities with these aspects that you just mentioned. And speaking of recruiting, what is your experience with recruiters? Before we wrap it up, is there anything you would like to kind of advise to fellow recruiters based on your experience working with any, if you had any chance to interact with any?
Yeah. I've definitely worked with some great recruiters. I think advice is definitely see the hiring manager as a partner and not as somebody who is blocking the process. I think, and I've worked with some recruiters who didn't want me as involved in the process as I wanted to be. And I've worked with others who, really embraced me being involved. And so, not to the point where I'm holding things up, but to the point where I need to be able to trust that, you know, you're doing what you can to make sure that we're bringing in the right person. There's some work that as a manager I need to do to make sure that you're set up for success, which is, really lay out what the job description is in a great way, tell you what I want the process to be. But I think a great partnership will allow for you to get the best people into the pipeline and then eventually hire the best people. So number one, really work with the hiring managers. Number two, educate yourself about the industry or about the kind of role that you're trying to hire for. I think you really do yourself a disservice if you just kind of treat all these different roles as if they're the same. They're not all the same. A software engineer is different from a graphic designer, which is different from a DevOps, a cloud engineer. And there are differences in the skills that you're trying to look for, and in some cases in the traits that you're looking for, even. And so understand who these people are, what the kind of like typical profiles are of these folks, what the best people that are in these roles, need to be able to do, and what kinds of things do they want in a job. I think those you really have to like understand. Take some time to understand who you're trying to hire and who you're working with in the market, so that you can try to find the best people.
Yeah, well, this is a great advice. It's really so important to understand who to look for, and then to be able to sell that opportunity to the candidate. Coming back to what you mentioned just a while ago, which is a really great advice. So, yeah, where can people learn more about you or connect with you if they would like to get in touch with you? And do you have any kind of website? Of course, we will link the LinkedIn profile, but is there anything else you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely my website is wearekuza.com, wearekuzaa.com. That's where you can learn more about my business. I also run a nonprofit called 757 Color Coded, which educates local people of color in the area and helps them to learn more about technology. I work with a 24-week intensive DevOps program called Level Up in Tech. I'm a career and development coach for that program. So definitely look into that if you're trying to transition into tech, specifically into cloud engineering. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
about it.
So I'll include these links in the show notes. And when you say local area, you mean Virginia, right? In the United States?
Yeah. I mean, they're in the Virginia Beach area. It's called Hampton Roads.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, I used to work in Virginia, but that was 15 years ago. I was there as a lifeguard for a summer holiday in Virginia.
Oh, nice. Very
Uh, 15, 17 years probably by now.
okay.
Well, anyway, great time. And awesome. Well, thanks for joining the podcast. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and insights and ideas. So I will include the links in the show notes and on YouTube in the comment section. So if people would like to connect with you, they will just follow the links.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me and enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah, thank you. It was awesome. Thank you. Bye.